You know, everybody should just do what they want to do. Sometimes retrograde is a good time to finally just move on. if every single retrograde you're like, is this always happening? Maybe it means move on, but it can also mean that no, this is the time to buckle down, to be in the discomfort, because transformation isn't easy. It's not fun, and it can be very painful. But when you get to the other side, it can be glorious. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of October 27th to November 2nd, where we will be covering 9 transits. Another heavy week. It has been, it's like the third week in a row. We've had at least 9 transits. So much happening, so much shifting, so much moving. How are you feeling? How are these aspects affecting you? Let me know. Leave a comment. Love hearing from you. The highlight of the week is Mercury transiting into Sagittarius. The Substack essay of the week is actually going to be about the transit that we covered last week that's still lingering this week all the way until early January, which is Jupiter in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. It's deep. It's deep, the healing that's happening right now. The stuff that's coming up. I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm feeling it. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and begin. But before we begin, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for listening. I really appreciate everyone who is getting something from what we're sharing through the weekly transit. So thank you. The first transit of the week is Mars in Scorpio trine Jupiter in Cancer. This aspect occurs from Friday, October 25th to Wednesday, October 29th, with the exact trine, which is a supportive aspect, occurring on Monday, October 27th. Mars is the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict. Transiting through Scorpio, the sign it rules, the fixed water sign symbolized by the scorpion. Jupiter is the god of thunder, lord of justice, the planet of luck and expansion. Cancer is the cardinal water sign, symbolized by the crab and ruled by the moon, the planet of emotions. This is a supportive aspect because it's 2 planets and 2 water signs aligning with each other. The hope is that this aspect is going to help us get into those deep, dark, sticky, icky, uncomfortable areas of our life, especially the ones where we are most intimate or we feel most vulnerable, and is helping us reflect upon the past. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. How did I get in this entanglement? What led me to here? What led me to this intimate relationship where I feel vulnerable? Was it my relationship with my mother? My relationship with my father? A combination of the two? But how does it go back even further to my grandparents and the relationships that they had, and those frequencies or habits or traits that they carried with them through their relationships that they passed down to me, not necessarily consciously. It's not like grandma or grandpa is like, this is how relationships need to be, though they very well could have. But as a child, you're like a sponge, and you just pick up the energy. So what did you pick up? And maybe you didn't even know your grandparents, but whatever your grandparents carried with them was passed down to your parents. Even if, let's say, like, well, my mom never knew her father. Well, that got passed down. That affected her in some way, and it's affecting you in some way. So Mars in Scorpio is saying, do you have the courage to really reflect upon where you are most vulnerable? Do you have the courage to stare at yourself in the mirror naked? Be like, oh my God. And it's a metaphor, but it's also literal too. It's both. And Jupiter is saying, where does this come from? Where does this stem from? Where do these fears and vulnerabilities stem from? The second transit of the week continues with Mars and Scorpio forming another trine with Saturn, retrograde in Pisces. So Jupiter and Saturn, they don't make an exact square, or they don't make an exact trine to one another, but they are within a degree of each other. Let's just say 2 degrees, because, we're talking about Mars in Scorpio aligning with Jupiter in Cancer, but also aligning with Saturn retrograde in Pisces. So the aspect between Mars and Saturn occurs from Sunday to Friday, October 26th to the 31st, with the exact trine occurring on Wednesday, October 29th, a couple days after Mars forms a trine with Jupiter. But when you look at these 2 planets, Jupiter and Saturn, they move within a degree of each other. That happened on right around October 19th. They moved within 2 degrees of one another, and then they moved tighter to within a degree of each other. That happens right around, that happens this week, really, right around October 29th, is when they move within a degree of each other. So this Wednesday, and they get pretty close. They get about 10 minutes away from each other. Yeah, they get about 10 minutes away from each other. And then Jupiter starts moving back, and Saturn stops moving back, and Jupiter moves further away from Saturn. So Jupiter moves about beyond 2 degrees away from Saturn. That happens mid-December. So, this is something that began, when did I say? I already forgot. And October 19th. So yeah. So really it's about 2 months. Mid-October to mid-December is when Jupiter and Saturn are within 2 degrees of each other. They don't form an exact square, but they're within 2 degrees. And, you're bringing in the Mars piece in Scorpio. Really is kind of activating both of these planets. Mars is the planet of action. Saturn is the planet of restriction. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So you have the planet of action, the planet of restriction, and the planet of expansion forming this grand trine, where each one is in one of the 3 water signs. Mars is in the fixed water sign of Scorpio. Jupiter is in the cardinal water sign of Cancer. And Saturn is in the mutable water sign of Pisces. Saturn is urging us to take responsibility for what's going on within our psyche, our psychological baggage, the guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame. Can you own it? Can you take responsibility for it? Can you hold yourself accountable and say, yeah, this is there? I have issues within my inner thought process. My dreams are, I don't know what's going on there, but they're not peaceful. They're not pleasant. I'm running from something. I'm afraid of something. I'm doing something wrong. That's all giving me insight into where I've potentially experienced some trauma. That has caused shame, regret, blame. Saturn is saying you have to take responsibility for this right now. And the aspect to Mars in Scorpio is saying, where is this showing up in your intimate relationships? When we talk about being vulnerable, where is what's at the root of that vulnerability or the fears that you have around being vulnerable? Not only where that occurred or where that was planted, the seed that was planted in your past, whether it was an experience that you had or whether it was passed down through your ancestry, your bloodline. And where does it exist unconsciously within you? Perhaps early this week, you become aware. And you're like, oh, that's where it's from. Oh, this is what's been going on in my mind. You're right. I do feel angry about this, fearful of that. A lot to get into here. We're diving deep this week. And as we continue the dive, we move on to the third transit, which is the Sun in Scorpio squaring the Moon in Aquarius, which happens on Wednesday, the same day that Mars in Scorpio forms that exact trine with Saturn in Pisces. 9:21 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, October 29th. It's 6 degrees. Take a look at your chart. Do you have any planets around 6 degrees in any fixed signs? Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. The Sun in Scorpio squaring the Moon in Aquarius is bringing those uncomfortable vulnerabilities to light. Maybe they're showing up in your group dynamics, where you're starting to feel more vulnerable, more exposed than you would like to be. Maybe a secret is being revealed, one that you've tried to keep hidden. It's been rising up in your unconscious, but you keep shoving it down until finally, I think I'm getting the image of like a Jack-in-the-Box. It's like pop goes the weasel. It's like all of a sudden like, oh my God, this thing's out. Oh, everybody's seeing it. Everybody's seeing me right now. I feel really vulnerable. Really exposed. Everybody knows I'm a bad person now. I'm a horrible human being. In what ways are you feeling exposed? In what ways are you feeling like people know things about you that you wouldn't want them to know? What's at the root of that shame? Where does it stem from? Now's the time to take responsibility for it. There is support because the fourth transit of the week also occurs on Wednesday. Begins on Monday, October 27th and lasts until Thursday, October 30th. But this is Mercury in Scorpio forming a trine with Neptune, retrograde in Pisces at the final degree, the 29th degree. The gift here is creating a portal, an opportunity, an invitation to really have those deep conversations that maybe you don't normally have, where you are sharing something about yourself that you normally wouldn't share. But in reflection, you're receiving compassion and empathy from those around you, those that you're sharing yourself with. Perhaps somebody is sharing something with you. Be open to, if you have the capacity to be open to receive the secrets that somebody wants to share with you about themselves, that maybe they feel ashamed about something, maybe they feel regretful, maybe they're blaming themselves and being hard on themselves about something, and they come to you and they share it with you, and you're like, oh, yeah, I feel that. I feel that. I'm sorry you're going through that. Maybe you have a way of reflecting it respectfully that says that helps the person that's sharing that with you that they're being really hard on themselves. And they deserve to treat themselves better than how they are. I mean, that can be a sensitive area because sometimes people don't want to hear that. But it all depends on the circumstance. The bottom line is what can you do to be a compassionate listener? And hopefully, the space is created for you to share whatever you want to share about yourself that causes you to feel vulnerable. But through sharing that vulnerability, you receive compassion and empathy from those that you're sharing it with. So when you think about the sun squaring the moon, the sun in Scorpio, the planet of vitality squaring the moon in Aquarius, the planet of emotions in the sign, the fixed air sign, symbolized by the water bear, very logical. Maybe you are exposed in some way in the group, and somebody in the group pulls you aside and is like, bro, give yourself a break, Come on. You're being really rough on yourself. Everything's okay. The Aquarius moon isn't lovey-dovey. It kind of breaks things down in a way that shows you the logic. So you don't have to be weighed down by the weight of the emotions. But Mercury in Scorpio, Trine, Neptune, retrograde in Pisces is bringing a little bit of that compassion. So, hey, I hear how you feel, and I understand how you feel. I mean, this isn't the exact situation, but I had something similar happen to me, where this and that and so on and so forth, and I get where you're coming from. Take it easy on yourself. Now, right after Mercury makes that aspect to Neptune retrograde in Pisces, at the final degree of Scorpio, on Wednesday, which, by the way, is Miércoles, Mercurio, Woden. Woden is the Old Norse god named for the Roman god Mercury. That's what Wednesday is named after, Woden. So Miércoles is Wednesday for my Spanish-speaking friends. Mercurio, it's an obvious connection there. So this is all happening on the day of Mercury, that Mercury in Scorpio forms that trine to Neptune retrograde in Pisces. That same day, right after making that aspect, Mercury transits into Sagittarius, the mutable fire sign, symbolized by the archer and ruled by Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion. Mercury is going to transit just through the first 6 degrees of Sagittarius from October 29th to November 18th, at which point it will retrograde back into Scorpio. It retrogrades back into Scorpio on November 18th. The retrograde in Scorpio ends at 20 degrees on November 29th. Mercury then comes back. So Mercury, I should have mentioned this. Let's do this now. This aspect between Mercury and Neptune at the final degree of Pisces, this is just the first of 3 times. Because Mercury retrograde is going to bring it back and form that trine again 2 more times. The retrograde time, that happens on... That's going to be on November 19th. Am I getting this date right? November 19th? Yep, November 19th is when Mercury retrograde forms a trine with Neptune retrograde at the 29th degree, Mercury in Scorpio, Neptune in Pisces. So that's November 19th. And then it happens again, the third and final time, happens when both Mercury and Neptune are direct at the 29th degree on December 11th. So this is interesting. This is interesting because it feels like the universe, God, whatever higher power you believe in, is like, okay, you've got some deep, deep work to do right now around intimacy and relationships, having compassion for those that you're intimate with, making sure that you're feeling lifted rather than drained, making sure that they're feeling lifted rather than drained in these relationships. So I'm really curious. Take note where you are in your intimate relationships on October 29th, November 19th, and December 11th. How have you evolved from October 29th to December 11th? You've got about a little over 5 weeks where there's some deep work coming up here in terms of how you communicate in your relationships and how you are able to hold space for those that you're in relationship with, to have compassion and empathy, but also making sure that they have compassion and empathy for you. Because it's one thing if you're compassionate and empathetic to somebody, but you're not getting anything in return, you're being drained. And so maybe it's more than the relationship that needs to transform. Maybe it needs to end. Much easier said than done. But something has to shift. So I'm curious to know how your relationships are shifting and changing. And it's going to be intense. during this period because this period is entirely during the Mercury retrograde shadow. Now, Mercury goes direct in Scorpio on November 29th and then transits out of its retrograde shadow on December 16th. So Mercury is going to transit all the way through Sagittarius from December 11th to January 1st. But this period from October 29th to November 18th, when Mercury's transiting through Sagittarius, like what's going to come out? Sagittarius is the truth teller. During this entire time, October 29th to November 18th, the sun is transiting through Scorpio. So the sun is illuminating all the blemishes in your intimate relationships. This is you standing in front of the mirror naked. The lighting is terrible, and you're noticing every wrinkle, every roll, every blemish. And the people that you love the most might be critiquing you in the most uncomfortable way. And they're just saying, well, I'm just being honest. You could lose a few pounds. You do have a few more wrinkles. I'm just being honest. Ouch. Thanks. That doesn't feel good. But if and when that comes up, you have to look within yourself and be like, what is this about? Is there something about myself that I'm missing? Or is this a reflection of the fact that maybe I don't love myself as much as I should, and that's why I've surrounded myself with people that I say I love and that say they love me, but I don't feel that love. I feel exposed in the worst possible way. I feel completely vulnerable and I feel drained. Something is going to come to the surface, and the thing is, because Mercury is going to be retrograde during this period, November 9th to the 29th, everybody should just do what they want to do. Sometimes retrograde is a good time to finally just move on. If every single retrograde you're like, is this always happening? Maybe it means move on. But it can also mean that no, this is the time to buckle down, to be in the discomfort. Because transformation isn't easy. It's not fun. And it can be very painful. But when you get to the other side, it can be glorious. I think of the rock being crushed into a diamond, or the grape being crushed into a bottle of wine. It doesn't feel good to get crushed, and we might feel crushed during this period. But if you're feeling crushed during this period, end of October, through to mid-December, just remember this right now. And remember that there is something glorious on the other side. You might not be able to see it, feel it, or even believe it. But understand that this discomfort is a part of life. And if you're able to sit with it, examine it, be honest about it, go within yourself and find compassion and love for yourself despite all the pain that you're feeling, eventually the sun's going to come up again. Your days will brighten. And you'll be grateful for not running from your problems, from not running from your pain. For taking the time to really examine your pain so that you can heal it. There's deep work happening right now. And Mercury in Sagittarius is going to rip the Band-Aid off of all of it and just let it bleed. Especially for those that have any planets in the first 6 degrees of Pisces or Virgo. It could be a tough period. Very tough. Because you're seeing things about yourself, like especially that Virgo piece. Like Virgo can be so critical and analytical, and then Sagittarius comes along and says, yeah, you're right. It is horrible. You are horrible. It's like, wait, I didn't want to hear that. I'm already telling me that to myself. It's like, well, I'm just telling you what I see. In the Pisces, trying to get slippery and warm and trying to get fuzzy and don't see me is like you're getting exposed. There's no hiding. It cuts through the clouds. The arrow cuts through the clouds and it hits you right in the heart. Now, for those who have key points or planets in the first 6 degrees of any of the fire signs, like Sagittarius, Aries, Leo, or the air signs, especially Libra and Aquarius, there might be some challenges with Gemini, because Gemini wants to stay kind of in that curious, passive phase of I don't know, and then Sagittarius points it out to you, and it's like, well, you can't not know now, because I'm showing you. But really, for those 5 other signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Libra, and Aquarius, like this is the time to thrive, to get the message out, to be honest and open, and that through that honesty and openness, something's going to push through. It's going to help you get to the other side of whatever stagnation you're feeling right now. It's going to create some movement. The 6th and 7th aspects of the week both involve Mercury and Sagittarius. One is Mercury and Sagittarius forming an opposition to Uranus retrograde in Gemini. That's October 28th to the 31st, Tuesday to Friday, with the exact opposition occurring on Wednesday, miércoles, the day of Mercury. The other is Mercury in Sagittarius forming a trine with Pluto in Aquarius, which is Wednesday to Friday, October 29th to the 31st, with the exact trine occurring on Thursday, October 30th. The opposition with Uranus. Uranus is the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, the unexpected. Gemini is the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins and ruled by Mercury. It's a sign of curiosity, conversation, connectivity. Uranus is creating a sense of independent thought, revolutionary thought. Mercury opposing that is maybe saying those thoughts are dumb. I don't like them. Or maybe it's like, that's a great thought. Yeah, cool. But there seems to be a sense of honesty and tension around what it means to be independent and free. Strong mental insight coming up here on Wednesday. Maybe somebody says something unexpected to you that turns on that light bulb in your mind. Like, oh, wow, that's it. That's the idea I've been looking for. And Mercury and Sagittarius forming the trine to Pluto and Aquarius. Pluto is the planet of transformation, the god of death, lord of the underworld. Aquarius is the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bearer, ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Pluto's transforming the way that we connect to the community, and what better way to transform than if everyone's being honest with each other? That's what Mercury and Sagittarius is doing right now. It's creating a real sense of honesty where you might hear people say things and you're like, oh damn, did they really say that? Wow, I guess the gloves are off now. Everyone's just kind of spitting fire, being honest with each other, and maybe that's what we need. Because it's going to help stir up all the water, the heaviness of what we talked about earlier with Mars in Scorpio, Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn in Pisces, holding down the emotions. Mercury in Sagittarius trying Pluto in Aquarius is just like spitting the truth. And it doesn't mean that the truth is the truth in totality, but it's the truth from that person's perspective, who's being really open and honest about whatever it is they're talking about. And maybe what they're saying is creating that sense of, oh God, I feel vulnerable now. They just called me out. How do I react to that? Do I fight back? Or do I take it in and say, I wonder if that's more about them than me. But it has to do something with me because they pointed it out within me. What do I need to learn from this? What's the purpose of this experience? If I feel hurt by it, it's bringing up something beneath the surface that I need to face. A wound? And that leads us to the 8th and 9th transits, which involve, one of which, the wounded healer, Chiron, retrograde in Aries. Both of the final two transits involve Venus, Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, transiting through Libra, the sign that it rules, the cardinal air sign symbolized by the scales. Venus in Libra forms an opposition to Chiron retrograde in Aries, Friday to Monday, October 31st to November 3rd, with the exact opposition occurring on Saturday, November 1st, while Venus in Libra also forms a square to Jupiter in Cancer, October 31st to November 3rd, with the exact square occurring on Sunday, November 2nd. So this is the relationship between Jupiter in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. That is something that's occurring from like October. Oh, let me look at my notes. Let me get it right. October 5th. October 5th to it's with Jupiter's within 2 degrees of Chiron, as Jupiter transits Cancer and Chiron transits Aries. They're within 2 degrees of each other from October 5th to January 10th. And so the end of the week is Venus bringing up that wounding in relationships. It's like, oh wow, my best friend, my wife, my husband, my lover, they just said something that was very hurtful to me, very honest. It hurt my feelings. Venus in Libra opposing Chiron in Aries is helping us face our insecurities in relationship. And Venus in Libra squaring Jupiter in Cancer is helping us take that uncomfortable look at our past. Say, where did this wound happen for me? What was the experience that I had that's now perpetuated into this moment that's bringing it up again? Again, is it ever going to stop? No. Yes. I don't know. It's an ongoing working process. And the reason why you had the experience you had is because the planets were aligned in the way that they were aligned when you were born, but it also stems back to your ancestral and familial trauma. This wasn't just born in you, it was passed down to you by the people that birthed you into this world. Your parents, their parents, their parents' parents, and so on and so forth. So this week really brings up a lot of insecurities, a lot of vulnerability, pushing us into uncomfortable, intimate situations so that we can be aware of the wound, because the wound cannot heal if you're not aware of it. If you are cut and need stitches, in order to stitch up the wound, you have to be able to see it. And this is the week where our wounds are exposed. And of course, if you are curious to know how any of these transits are affecting you specifically to your astrological code, if you're looking for insight, I encourage you to contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. And if you're looking for support and guidance through these transits, I encourage you to inquire about my Cosmic Pathway program when you schedule your reading with me. Readings are live or recorded. So if you don't have time, or if you don't want to do a live reading face-to-face with me, I will also do recorded readings. These options are all available at theweeklytransit.com. Now, we'll move into the Substack Essay of the Week. Thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed to my Substack. And thank you for everyone who has subscribed to the paid content of my Substack. The essay that I'm going to read now is free on Substack. I'm also creating paid content as well to help guide you through these major transits. The wound that protects. Jupiter in Cancer, square Chiron in Aries. When a father's promise meets the healer's failure. From October 5th, 2025 to January 10th, 2026, Jupiter in Cancer moves within 2 degrees of square to Chiron in Aries. Close enough for the archetypal tension to grip the collective soul. In the last 867 years, this aspect has occurred 10 times. 1149, 1634 to 35, 1682, 1729, 1776 to 77, 1823 to 24, 1871, and now returns in 2025, exact October 23rd, and again December 21st. Beneath it, the same pattern. Jupiter in Cancer, square Chiron in Aries. The god of thunder promising expansion and protection, while the wounded healer exposes the lie that violence can never truly secure what we love. This square confronts us with one choice: protect your wound or heal it, and the world will feel the difference. Each of these eras proves the same truth. The wound you inflict to defend yourself becomes the wound you carry forever. The myth behind the wound. Before we trace the pattern through history, we must understand the gods themselves, because this is not just an astrological aspect. This is a family drama written in the stars. And like all family dramas, it's about generational trauma that repeats until someone finally breaks the pattern. To understand Jupiter and Chiron, we must start 3 generations back, with a wound passed down like an inheritance of violence. Uranus imprisoned his children, refusing to let them emerge from Gaia's womb. His son, Kronos, aka Saturn, castrated him in a rage and overthrew him. Kronos, having violently overthrown his father, became terrified of the same fate, so he devoured his own children whole, swallowing them into darkness to prevent the prophecy that one would overthrow him. His son, Zeus, aka Jupiter, escaped, grew strong, and overthrew him. Zeus became king of the gods, but the pattern of the wounded father who wounds his children did not end. He ruled through punishment and expansion, through law and thunder. When Prometheus showed compassion to humanity by stealing fire from the gods to give to mortals, Jupiter chained him to a rock and condemned him to eternal torment, his liver eaten daily by an eagle, only to regenerate each night so the suffering could continue forever. 3 generations, 3 fathers who harmed their children, 3 sons who overthrew their fathers through violence. And then, Chiron. Jupiter and Chiron are half-brothers, both sons of Kronos, but Chiron was never meant to exist. Born of Kronos' rape of the nymph Philaria, he emerged as a half-beast centaur, so horrifying to his mother that she begged the gods to turn her into a tree rather than nurse him. Abandoned, monstrous, unwanted, the ultimate family scapegoat, the one born from his father's violence, rejected for being visible, rejected for being a visible reminder of that violence. Yet Chiron did not become what his lineage suggested. Raised by Apollo, he became the greatest healer and teacher of heroes. Achilles, Asclepius, Jason, all learned at his feet. He broke the pattern, not through revenge, but through transformation. He took the wound of abandonment and used it to recognize suffering in others. When Chiron was accidentally struck by a poisoned arrow, his immortality became a curse. He could heal everyone except himself. His wound would never close. He carried the family pain, immortal, unhealable, permanent. And here's where the family drama reaches its climax, where 3 generations of violence finally meet their opposite. Jupiter, carrying forward the pattern of his father and grandfather, had chained Prometheus for the crime of compassion. But Chiron, the wounded, abandoned, unwanted half-brother, who knew intimately what it meant to suffer, looked at Prometheus's agony and made a choice that no one in his family had ever made before. He chose healing over revenge, compassion over punishment, liberation over control. Chiron offered to take Prometheus's place. He would surrender his cursed immortality and finally die, so that another's suffering could end. He would use his wound, the one he couldn't heal, to free someone from theirs. And Jupiter, heir to 3 generations of fathers who imprisoned, devoured, and punished, was moved by his brother's act. The punisher allowed the healer's mercy to override his own judgment. The pattern, for the first time in 3 generations, was broken. Jupiter freed Chiron from his suffering and placed him among the constellations, the teacher who liberates others even while carrying his own wound. This is the lesson written in the myth. Unhealed familial trauma becomes generational violence until someone chooses to transform their own wound instead of inflicting it. Uranus imprisoned, Kronos castrated and devoured, Zeus punished and chained. Each believed they were protecting themselves. Each passed the wound to the next generation. But Chiron, the unwanted one, the abandoned half-beast, the brother with the unhealable wound, proved that hurt people don't have to hurt people. Healed enough people can help people. Jupiter rules through law, expansion, and the promise that if you follow his order, you will be protected. He blesses and he devours. His protection always carries a cost. He is the heir to a lineage of fathers who believed control equals safety. When Jupiter enters Cancer, the cardinal water sign of home, family, and emotional belonging, he amplifies our instincts to defend the hearth. He makes us believe our family, our homeland, our people are worth any cost to protect. But Jupiter in Cancer truly asks to nurture where we were wronged, to parent the abandoned child within ourselves with the love we never received, to break the patterns our fathers taught us. In Aries, the cardinal fire sign ruled by Mars, Chiron's wound becomes the wound of existence itself, the pain of being born into a world that never wanted you, the rage of an abandoned child, the cost of authenticity in a society that demands you hide your beast nature to be loved. But Aries also carries the courage to be authentic anyway, to fight for what's right, to blaze a path others can follow, to break the pattern even when breaking it means dying. When Jupiter in Cancer squares Chiron in Aries, the heir to 3 generations of wounded fathers confronts the brother who broke the pattern. The one who protects through punishment meets the one who liberates through sacrifice. The defender of order must reckon with the liberator of prisoners. This is the archetype beneath every war justified as defense, every colonization sold as civilization, every border wall built in the name of security. Jupiter says, I will expand justice and keep you safe, just as my father tried and his father before him. Chiron's wound answers, but that pattern only creates more wounded children who become violent fathers. And Chiron's redemption whispers, you could stop inflicting your pain and start healing it in yourself and in others. The pattern ends when someone chooses differently. The square asks, will you inherit your father's wounds and pass them to your children? Or will you be the one like Chiron, who finally breaks the pattern by transforming your suffering into liberation for another? History is where the mythology tests the truth. Every time these archetypes return, humanity reenacts the same story to see if we've learned anything new. The wound evolves. 3 acts across 8 centuries. Astrology doesn't dictate events. It reveals the patterns we repeat until we choose to break them. Each return of this square asks whether we'll live the myth consciously or unconsciously this time. The pattern doesn't just repeat, it evolves. Each era faces the same archetypal tension, but the wound changes costume as humanity's understanding of protection transforms. Act 1. The Sacred Wound, 1149 to 1682. When we died for God. February 25th, 1149. The Second Crusade collapsed in humiliating defeat at Damascus the previous July. But this was not the wound of battle. It was the wound of recognition, which cuts deeper than any sword. Louis VII lingered in Jerusalem through early 1149, unable to go home. His marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine disintegrating as the truth became undeniable. Their protection of Christianity had instead united and strengthened their enemies. Bernard of Clairvaux, who had preached this crusade with mystical fervor, was so humiliated he sent an apology to the Pope. 4 months later, Nur ad-Din captured Antioch and beheaded Raymond of Antioch. The wound the Crusaders inflicted to protect their faith became the wound that destroyed the Crusader states entirely. This is the pattern's cruelest lesson. The moment you realize your defense has guaranteed your defeat. September 24th, 1634. At Nordlingen, roughly 16,000 combatants died in a single day. Knights promised divine victory discovered only carnage. Religion had become a mask for politics. 3 weeks earlier, Urbain Grandier had been burned alive at the stake in Loudun, France, convicted of witchcraft in a political trial. A priest sacrificed to defend the institution he served. February 10th, 1635. The calm before France entered the war. Exhausted, starving, Germany's people bled under the weight of their protectors. Within months, Catholic France would ally with Protestant Sweden against Catholic Habsburgs. Defending faith, revealed as conquest in disguise. This threshold moment shows the wound of recognition again. Standing at the edge of a choice you know will betray everything you claim to protect, but making it anyway. July 13th, 1682. René Robert Cavelier de la Salle stood at the implications of his April claim. The entire Mississippi Basin now belonged to France. Europe's unheralded trauma, centuries of war, plague, persecution, was being exported across oceans. The wound of conquest dressed itself as civilization, spreading smallpox and forced conversion in the name of bringing God to the wilderness. The sacred wound taught defending God, King, and Church through violence guarantees you'll lose all three. Act 2. The Sovereign Wound, 1729 to 1871. When we died for country. August 12th, 1729. On July 25th, 7 of the 8 Lords Proprietor of Carolina sold their shares to the British Crown, making permanent the division into North and South as royal colonies. By August, the seeds of rebellion were germinating in colonial soil, the child beginning to demand separation from the parent who takes without giving. Within 2 generations, the wound would erupt as revolution. September 8th, 1776 to February 9th, 1777. Nathan Hale volunteered to spy behind British lines and was hanged without trial on September 22nd, his final words becoming America's founding myth. "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." By February, Washington's troops were binding their bleeding, frostbitten feet with rags, dining on rice and vinegar when they could eat it all. Jupiter's promise of expansion and justice, Chiron's wound of martyrdom and starvation. The colonists fought for freedom while enslaving others, proving that revolutions export their wounds as easily as they shed their chains. October 19th, 1823 to June 20th, 1824. The Greek and Latin American revolutions peaked. Americans raised over $32,000 for Greece's independence fight, roughly $850,000 today, while Lafayette, the aging revolutionary hero, limped through his U.S. tour as living proof of Jupiter's promise and Chiron's scar. Nations were born through wounds that never healed. July 13th, 1871, weeks after Bloody Week, when French government forces executed between 10,000 and 20,000 communards in Paris streets. The mass graves at Père Lachaise Cemetery festered as an open wound in the French psyche. France, trying to protect itself from the humiliation of losing to Prussia, turned its guns on its own citizens. Protecting a nation by killing its people is suicide disguised as patriotism. In the 8th century, the Crusaders' cross had become the soldier's flag. The holy wound traded its hymns for an anthem. The sovereign wound asked, "Is it ever worth dying for a country, or only worth living for one?" Act 3. The Identity Wound, 2025 to 2026. When we die for what exactly? October 5th, 2025 to January 10th, 2026, the square returns. But this time, the wound is existential. We no longer die primarily for God or country. We die for identity itself. Who we believe we are in a world where selfhood has become performance, and borders are both digital and physical. Jupiter in Cancer amplifies factional belonging. My people, my truth, my safety. But in 2025, my people might be an online community I've never met. My truth might contradict verifiable fact. My safety might mean surveillance, walls, and the elimination of anyone who threatens my sense of belonging. Chiron in Aries exposes the wounds beneath. We've confused authenticity with aggression, protection with domination, and justified violence by claiming victimhood. Every conflict now is framed as self-defense. Every border is a scar. We are a collective of hurt people hurting people until we decide to become hurt people helping people. Today, the flag has dissolved into a face. The wound is no longer God or country, it's identity itself. Both Jupiter and Chiron form an exact square retrograde at the solstice. Protection turns inward. Not how do I defend, but what am I defending myself from feeling? The invitation is clear. Nurture the wound. Don't weaponize it. This is what Chiron asks of us. The courageous care that protects without punishing, that asserts without attacking. What wound are you protecting instead of healing? Are you demanding the world nurture you or nurturing yourself? Can you be like Chiron instead of Jupiter, using your wound to free another? On the winter solstice, as the sun enters Capricorn and Jupiter perfects his second exact square to Chiron, someone, somewhere, will justify violence as protection. A parent will cut off a child in the name of boundaries. A nation will bomb civilians in the name of security. A heart will close in the name of self-preservation. And everyone will believe they're doing the right thing. But someone will choose differently. Someone will recognize their wound and tend it instead of weaponizing it. Someone will be like Chiron, using their pain to free another from theirs. The pattern doesn't break because the planets change position. The pattern breaks when one person, maybe you, chooses differently. Protection that requires violence is just trauma with better PR. And the only homeland worth defending is the one where everyone belongs, starting with the abandoned child within yourself. The warrior who lays down the sword doesn't lose. He finally wins the only battle that ever mattered, the one within himself. The healer who tends her own wound first doesn't abandon others. She becomes capable of helping them heal theirs. And the collective that stops being hurt people, hurting people, and becomes hurt people, helping people, that collective finally becomes a homeland worth living for. And the wound, yours, mine, ours, theirs, waits to see if this time we'll finally learn. Not to fight, not to defend, not to protect through violence, but to heal, to nurture, to free each other from the rocks we're chained to, because someone once freed us from ours. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope you feel empowered by this message. I thank you for spending your time with me, and I look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog-Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.